The champagne flute trembled in my hand as my brother Marcus launched into his third monologue of the evening. Christmas Eve at our parents' house in Pasadena, and he turned the living room into his personal stage. Series B funding closed at $180 million, he announced to the assembled relatives, his voice carrying that particular blend of smugness I'd grown familiar with over 32 years. CloudReach is the fastest-growing cloud infrastructure company in North America. Forbes called us the next Amazon Web Services. Aunt Linda clapped politely. Uncle Robert raised his beer in salute. Mom practically glowed with pride, her hand resting on Marcus's shoulder like he'd just won the Nobel Prize. "And what's your role there, sweetie?" Aunt Linda asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Senior Product Manager," Marcus said, straightening his designer tie. "I oversee the entire roadmap for our enterprise solutions. The CEO values my input on everything. He actually texted me on Christmas Eve about Q1 strategy." He pulled out his phone as evidence, waving it like a trophy. Dad nodded approvingly from his armchair. Marcus has real stability now. Benefits, stock options, the whole package. He's set for life when they go public. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Unlike me. Unlike his disappointment of a daughter who, at 34, still rented a one-bedroom apartment in Venice Beach and drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic. "That's wonderful, Marcus," I said, meaning it. I was genuinely happy for him even if he was being insufferable about it. He turned to me then, his expression shifting to something that looked almost like pity. "So, Sarah, what are you up to these days?" "Still doing, what was it? Consulting." The room went quiet. Everyone knew this script. This was the part where Marcus established the hierarchy, where I was gently reminded of my place in the family pecking order. "Yes," I said simply. "Still consulting." "What kind of consulting?" Aunt Linda asked. She'd always been kind to me, one of the few relatives who didn't treat my career like a shameful secret. I took a sip of champagne, buying time. "Financial consulting. I work with startups, mostly helping them with growth strategy, that kind of thing." Marcus snorted. "Startups. God, that's a rough space right now. The funding environment is brutal. Half of them won't survive the next 12 months. He shook his head with exaggerated sympathy. "You must see a lot of failures." "Some," I admitted. "Well, at least you're trying," Mom said, her tone suggesting I was a child learning to ride a bike rather than a woman with an MBA from Stanford and a decade of experience. "Maybe Marcus could put in a good word for you at CloudReach. They must need consultants." The offer landed like a slap, even though she'd meant it kindly. My 32-year-old brother recommending me for a job. As if I needed his charity. "That's okay," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm happy where I am." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because I heard the consulting market is pretty saturated. What are you pulling in annually? If you don't mind me asking." I did mind. But the whole family was watching now, waiting for my answer. Waiting to quantify exactly how much of a disappointment I was compared to Golden Boy Marcus and his stock options. "I do all right," I said. "Come on, ballpark it." Marcus leaned back, enjoying this. "6 figures? Low 6 figures. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. "Marcus, that's not appropriate," Aunt Linda said gently. "What? We're family. Sarah knows I'm just trying to help. I mean, if she's struggling, maybe Dad could." He trailed off, letting the implication finish the sentence. Maybe Dad could help me out financially. Maybe they could all pitch in for poor Sarah who couldn't get her life together. The phone buzzed again. Then again. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "I need to take this." I walked out to the backyard, the cool December air a relief after the suffocating living room. My phone showed 3 missed calls from James Chin, CEO of CloudReach. And 2 texts. James Chin, "Sarah, emergency. Board is pushing for March IPO. Need to discuss acceleration timeline. Can we meet December 26th? James Chin. Also, your brother works here? Marcus Mitchell. Just found out. Small world. See you January 9th for quarterly review." I stared at the messages for a long moment, then typed back. "January 9th works. See you then." Through the window I could see Marcus holding court, probably explaining cloud infrastructure to relatives who had no idea what he was talking about. Mom hung on every word. Dad beamed with pride. They had no idea that CloudReach existed because of a $25 million Series A check I'd signed 18 months ago. That their Series B funding, the $180 million Marcus was so proud of, had come largely from the syndicate I'd assembled. That I'd introduced James Chin to 3 of his key hires, including his CTO. They had no idea that I was a partner at Apex Ventures, one of the most successful venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. That my portfolio was worth north of $3 billion. That I'd been named to Forbes 30 Under 30 in venture capital 4 years ago and had just been profiled in TechCrunch as one of the power players reshaping startup funding. They had no idea because I'd never told them. Not when Mom asked if I'd found a real job, yet. Not when Dad suggested I go back to school for something more stable. Not when Marcus started at CloudReach 9 months ago and immediately began treating me like the family charity case. I'd kept quiet for a reason. I wanted to see if they valued me, Sarah, their daughter and sister, without the validation of money or status. I wanted to know if they'd be proud of me even if I was just a struggling consultant. The answer apparently was no. I walked back inside. Marcus was showing Uncle Robert something on his phone, probably his employee dashboard or stock option agreement. Everything okay? Mom asked. Fine, I said. Just work stuff. On Christmas Eve? Marcus laughed. What kind of consulting emergency could there be? I smiled. Just a client checking in. Well, hopefully they're paying you overtime, Dad joked. The rest of the evening crawled by. More stories about CloudReach. More pointed questions about my life that I deflected with practiced ease. More pitying looks from Mom and encouragement to hang in there. At 10 o'clock I made my excuses and left. As I drove back to Venice Beach my phone rang. James Chin again. Sarah, sorry to bother you on Christmas Eve, he said when I answered. I know we're meeting on the 9th, but I wanted to give you a heads up. The board wants to accelerate everything. IPO by March, which means we need to finalize the S1, get the roadshow scheduled, the whole 9 yards. That's ambitious, I said. It's insane, he admitted. But the market conditions are perfect and frankly we need the capital to scale. Your initial thesis about enterprise adoption was dead on. We're at 340% year-over-year growth. Congratulations, James. You've built something special. We've built something special, he corrected. None of this happens without Apex's support. Without your support. You took a chance on us when everyone else was funding AI companies. I smiled in the darkness of my car. I liked your vision. Still do. The team is excited to meet you properly on the 9th. I know we've done most of our check-ins remotely, but having you come to the office will be huge for morale. Also, funny story, I just found out your brother works here. My stomach tightened. Yeah, small world. Marcus Mitchell, right? Senior PM on the enterprise team. Good guy, sharp thinker. Does he know you're with Apex? We don't really talk about work, I said carefully. Well, he's about to find out. I'm doing an all-hands before our meeting to announce your visit. We're trying to build more transparency around our investors, show the team who's backing us. Is that okay? I thought about Marcus's face earlier that evening. The casual condescension. The pity. Mom's suggestion that he could get me a job. That's fine, I said. Great. See you January 9th at 10 a.m. And Sarah? Thank you. For everything. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. I spent Christmas Day alone in my apartment working on due diligence for a new AI startup. I had coffee with 2 founders on the 27th. I reviewed term sheets. I attended a partner meeting at Apex's Sand Hill Road office, where we discussed our Q1 investment strategy. My family didn't call. Not surprising. Christmas was Marcus's show now. I was just a supporting character in his success story. On January 8th, I got my hair done and picked up the Armani suit I'd had tailored. Black, perfectly cut with a silk blouse the color of money. I packed my briefcase with the CloudReach files. Every email, every board memo, every funding round document. That evening Marcus called. Hey Sarah, he said, his voice oddly tight. You busy tomorrow? I have some meetings. Why? There's this big thing at work. Our lead investor is visiting. CEO is making a huge deal about it. We're all required to attend this all-hands meeting at 9:30. Sounds important, I said neutrally. Yeah, I guess. Honestly, it's probably just some rich asshole who wants to feel important. VCs are the worst. They throw money around and act like they built the company themselves. I bit my tongue. Is that right? Oh yeah. James worships these people, but between you and me, we'd be just as successful without them. Maybe more successful. VCs always want control, want to meddle in product decisions they don't understand. I said. Anyway, I was calling because, look, I know Christmas was kind of rough. Dad mentioned you seemed quiet. I just wanted to say if you need anything, I'm here. If you're struggling with money or whatever, I could probably spot you a loan. The stock options are going to be worth millions when we IPO. The kindness in his voice was genuine, which somehow made it worse. I appreciate that, Marcus. But I'm fine. You sure? Because Mom's worried. She thinks you're too proud to ask for help. Tell Mom I'm okay, I said. Really? All right. But the offer stands. Oh, and if you ever want to pivot into tech, I could introduce you to our HR people. We're always hiring consultants for project work. Wouldn't be a permanent role, but it would get your foot in the door. I closed my eyes. Thanks, Marcus. Good luck with your meeting tomorrow. Yeah, should be interesting. Maybe I'll actually get to meet the person who signs our paychecks. He laughed. Talk soon. January 9th arrived cold and clear. I drove to Cloudreach's headquarters in Palo Alto, a sleek glass building in a tech park off the 101. The parking lot was full of Teslas and BMWs, startup money on display. I sat in my car for a moment, checking my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was polished, professional, powerful. Not the struggling consultant my family pitied. Not the disappointment they'd written off. Sarah Mitchell, partner at Apex Ventures. Early-stage investor in 17 companies. Board member at 5. Net worth north of 40 million, mostly in carried interest and portfolio equity. I grabbed my briefcase and walked inside. The receptionist smiled brightly. Good morning. How can I help you? Sarah Mitchell from Apex Ventures. I have a 10 o'clock with James Chin. Her eyes widened slightly. Of course, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Chin mentioned you'd be arriving. He's just finishing the all-hands meeting now. Would you like to wait in the conference room, or would you prefer to join them? I checked my watch. 9:45. I'll join them. Wonderful. The meeting is in the main hall, second floor. I'll escort you. We took the elevator up. Through the glass walls I could see the open-plan office, standing desks, collaboration spaces, the casual chaos of a growing startup. Young people in hoodies and expensive sneakers, the uniform of tech success. The receptionist led me to double doors. Inside I could hear James's voice over a microphone. And that's why transparency around our cap table matters. You all deserve to know who believes in this company, who's backing our vision. So before we dive into Q1 goals, I want to introduce someone very special. The receptionist opened the door quietly. The room was packed, at least 200 people, standing room only. James stood on a small stage at the front, a presentation screen behind him showing the Cloudreach logo. Our lead investor joined us at Series A when we were just 15 people in a WeWork, James continued. When other VCs said cloud infrastructure was too crowded, too competitive, one firm saw our potential. Apex Ventures led our Series A with 25 million. They assembled our Series B syndicate. And they've been our strongest advisor through every pivot, every challenge, every victory. I scanned the crowd looking for Marcus. Found him standing near the left side, arms crossed, looking mildly bored. The partner who championed Cloudreach has one of the best track records in venture capital, James said. Portfolio companies worth over 3 billion in aggregate. Board member at companies you all use every day. And more importantly, someone who genuinely believes in what we're building here. Marcus shifted his weight, checking his phone. Probably texting Mom about how boring this was. So please join me in welcoming Sarah Mitchell from Apex Ventures. I walked down the center aisle. The room erupted in applause. Polite, professional, the sound of 200 people doing what they're told. But I watched faces turn, watched the recognition ripple through the crowd. Watched Marcus's head snap up. Our eyes met across the room. I saw the confusion first. What was I doing here? Then the recognition of my name. Then the impossible math starting to click into place. James stepped down from the stage, hand extended, beaming. Sarah, thank you so much for coming. Everyone, this is the woman who made Cloudreach possible. I shook his hand, smiled at the crowd. Thank you, James. It's wonderful to finally see the team in person. Let me give you proper introductions, James said, leading me toward the stage. Sarah, this is the product team led by Kevin Walsh. Engineering over here led by our CTO Priya Sharma. You two have met, of course. Priya waved, grinning. We'd had dinner 3 times in the past year, discussing Cloudreach's technical roadmap. Sales and marketing, James continued, gesturing to the right side of the room. And product management, including Marcus Mitchell, one of our rising stars. Every head in the room turned to look at Marcus. He stood frozen, face pale, phone still in his hand. Marcus and I actually know each other, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. He's my brother. The reaction was immediate. Whispers, shocked looks, people glancing between us like they were watching a tennis match. James's eyes went wide. Your brother? I knew you had the same last name, but I didn't make the connection. That's incredible. Marcus, you never mentioned your sister was in venture capital. Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. We don't really talk about work. Well, this is a small world moment, James laughed. Sarah, would you mind saying a few words to the team? They'd love to hear your perspective. I climbed the 3 steps to the stage. 200 faces looked up at me. Young, hungry, brilliant. The future of tech assembled in one room. And in the middle of them, my brother looking like he might be sick. Thank you, James, I said into the microphone. And thank you all for building something extraordinary. When James first pitched CloudReach 18 months ago, I knew immediately this was special. Not because of the technology, though that's best in class, but because of the vision. The understanding that cloud infrastructure isn't about speeds and feeds, it's about enabling the next generation of innovation. I clicked to the next slide, which showed CloudReach's growth metrics. You've exceeded every projection we made. Revenue is up 340% year over year. Customer retention is at 98%. You've gone from 15 employees to over 200. You've built something that will define the industry for the next decade. More applause. I let it die down before continuing. At Apex, we invest in people, not just products. We back founders who have the courage to see what others miss. And we partner with teams who have the discipline to execute. CloudReach has both. That's why we led your series. That's why we assembled your Series B syndicate. And that's why we'll continue to support you through the IPO and beyond. I paused, looking directly at Marcus. Some people think venture capital is about throwing money around. But it's not. It's about belief. It's about seeing potential before anyone else does. It's about taking risks on people who might not look successful yet, but who have the vision and drive to build something incredible. Marcus's face had gone from pale to red. So congratulations, I finished. To everyone in this room, you're part of something special. And I'm honored to be along for the ride. The applause was genuine this time, enthusiastic. James took the microphone back, launching into a discussion of Q1 goals. I stepped off the stage and immediately people approached me. Engineers wanting to discuss the technical roadmap, product managers pitching features, everyone wanting a moment with the person who'd believed in them. Marcus didn't approach. He stood rooted to his spot, staring at me like I was a stranger. The all-hands meeting ended at 10:15. James ushered me to a conference room where the executive team waited. CTO, CFO, VP of Sales, VP of Product. We spent 2 hours reviewing the IPO timeline, discussing board composition, planning the roadshow. At noon, James walked me back to the lobby. That went better than I could have hoped, he said. The team is energized. And having you here, seeing that our investors are engaged, it matters. Happy to help, I said. CloudReach is one of my favorite portfolio companies. You should be very proud. We couldn't have done it without you. He hesitated. Can I ask, what's the deal with your brother? He looked like he'd seen a ghost. I smiled carefully. Family dynamics. We don't talk about work much. Fair enough. Well, he's lucky to have you. Must be inspiring having a sister who's accomplished so much. I didn't correct him. As I walked to my car, my phone exploded with messages. 7 texts from Marcus. 3 missed calls. 2 voicemails. I listened to the first voicemail in my car. Sarah, what the fuck? You're a venture capitalist? You're a partner? At Apex? You've been lying to us for years. Call me back. Now. The second voicemail was quieter, shakier. Sarah, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think? Mom is going to lose her mind when she finds out. Dad too. You need to call me. Please. I deleted both voicemails and drove back to Venice Beach. That evening, the family group chat erupted. Marcus, everyone needs to hear this. Sarah isn't a consultant. She's a venture capitalist. A partner at one of the biggest VC firms in Silicon Valley. Mom, what? Sarah, is this true? Dad, Marcus, what are you talking about? Marcus, she's been lying to us. She's rich. Like really rich. She invested in CloudReach. She's basically my boss's boss. Aunt Linda, Sarah, that's wonderful. Why didn't you tell us? Mom, Sarah, please call me. I'm so confused. I muted the chat and poured myself a glass of wine. The call started at 7. Mom first, then Dad, then Marcus again. I let them all go to voicemail. At 8:30 someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Marcus standing in the hallway, still wearing his Cloudreach hoodie. I opened the door. "Why?" he said immediately. "Why did you lie to us?" "I didn't lie," I said calmly. "I just didn't correct your assumptions." "That's the same thing." He pushed past me into the apartment. "Hey Sarah, do you know how I felt today? Standing in that room while everyone looked at me? While they realized my sister is Sarah Mitchell from Apex Ventures and I had no idea. How did it feel?" I asked. He spun to face me. "Humiliating. I look like an idiot. My own sister, and I didn't even know what she did for a living." "You never asked," I said quietly. "Not really. You asked what I did, and when I said consulting you made assumptions. You decided I was struggling. You offered me loans. You suggested Dad could help me out. Because you live in this tiny apartment. You drive a Honda. You never talk about your job." "I like my apartment," I said. "It's close to the beach. And my car runs fine. Why would I talk about my job when you clearly weren't interested?" He stared at me. "That's not fair. Isn't it? Marcus, when was the last time you asked me a question about my life that wasn't designed to confirm I was less successful than you? That's not. I was trying to help. Were you?" I walked to my wine glass, took a sip. "Or were you trying to feel superior? Oh come on. You're the one who's been playing games. You could have told us the truth any time." "I wanted to see if you'd value me without the validation," I said. "I wanted to know if Mom and Dad would be proud of me even if I was just a struggling consultant. If you'd treat me with respect even if I wasn't successful. And now I know." He flinched. "That's not fair, Sarah. We love you. I know you do. But love and respect aren't the same thing." My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. "Mom, Sarah, please talk to us. We're so proud of you. Why would you hide this?" I showed Marcus the text. "See that? We're so proud of you. Not, we've always been proud of you. Not, we're proud of who you are. They're proud now that they know I'm successful. That's the difference." "You're being unfair," Marcus said again, but his voice was quieter now. "We didn't know. How could we be proud of something we didn't know about?" "You could have been proud of me anyway," I said. "You could have assumed I was doing well. You could have given me the benefit of the doubt. Instead you assumed I was failing. You pitied me. You offered me charity. I was trying to be nice. You were trying to be generous. There's a difference. Generosity comes from a place of equality. Charity comes from a place of superiority." He sat down heavily on my couch. "I didn't mean it like that." "I know," I said, and I meant it. But it still hurt. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside I could hear the ocean, the eternal rhythm of waves. "Mom wants to have dinner," Marcus said finally. "This weekend. She wants to celebrate your success." "My success," I repeated. "Not me. My success. Sarah." "I'll think about it," I said. He stood looking lost. "I'm sorry. For what it's worth. I didn't realize. I should have asked more questions. I should have been a better brother." "Yeah," I said. "You should have." He left without another word. The calls continued for the next 3 days. Mom crying, saying she was so proud, asking why I'd hidden this from them. Dad gruff, saying he'd always known I'd make something of myself, even though we both knew that was a lie. Aunt Linda genuinely happy, asking if we could have coffee. I called her back. We met at a cafe in Santa Monica. "You look good," she said, hugging me. "Powerful." "I feel tired," I admitted. "I bet." She ordered us both coffee. "For what it's worth, I always suspected you were doing better than you let on. You had that look." "What look?" "The look of someone who has nothing to prove. Your brother has always been desperate to impress everyone. You never were. That told me everything I needed to know." I smiled. "You're the only one who noticed. Your parents love you," she said gently. "But they're not very perceptive. They see what they expect to see. Marcus was always the golden child. Confident, loud, obvious. You were quieter. They mistook that for weakness." "I'm not weak," I said. "I know, honey. But they're going to feel terrible when they realize what they missed. What they assumed. You need to be ready for that." "I don't know if I want to forgive them," I said quietly. "You don't have to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But eventually, you'll need to decide what kind of relationship you want with them going forward. Whether their ignorance is forgivable or not." I thought about that over the next week. I went to work, reviewed term sheets, met with founders. CloudReach announced their IPO filing on January 15th. The initial valuation was set at $2.8 billion. My Series A shares were worth $180 million on paper. My carried interest from Apex would be substantial. Marcus texted me when the news broke. Marcus, congratulations. You made a great investment. Me, thank you. You should be proud. You helped build this. Marcus, did you know I was working there when you invested? You joined 9 months after our Series A closed. Marcus, but you knew I was there for the Series B. Me, yes. Marcus, and you didn't tell me. Me, you didn't ask. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, Marcus, family dinner Sunday. Mom's making your favorite. Please come. I stared at the message for a long time. Me, I'll think about it. Sunday arrived cold and rainy. I drove to Pasadena in my Honda Civic wearing jeans and a sweater. Just Sarah. Not Sarah Mitchell, partner at Apex Ventures. Not the woman who'd built a $3 billion portfolio. Just me. Mom opened the door before I could knock. Sarah. Oh honey, come in. You must be freezing. The house smelled like pot roast. My favorite, like Marcus had said. The table was set for 5. Mom, Dad, Marcus, me and Aunt Linda. Linda's here. I asked. I invited her, Mom said. I hope that's okay. She said you two had coffee. That's fine. Dad stood when I entered the dining room. Sarah. Good to see you. Hi, Dad. Marcus was already sitting, looking uncomfortable. He nodded at me. Hey. We sat. Mom brought out the pot roast, the potatoes, the carrots. The meal I'd grown up with, the comfort food of my childhood. For a while no one spoke. We just ate, the silence heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. We owe you an apology. I looked up. We made assumptions, he continued. About your career. About your life. We didn't ask the right questions. We didn't see what was right in front of us. We're so sorry, honey, Mom said, her eyes shining with tears. We should have known. We should have asked. We should have been proud of you all along. Why weren't you? I asked quietly. The question hung in the air. I don't know, Mom whispered. I think we saw what we expected to see. Marcus was always so confident, so sure of himself. You were quieter. We mistook that for uncertainty. I was never uncertain, I said. I was just private. I know that now, Dad said. And I'm sorry. We failed you as parents. We made you feel like you had to hide your success from us. You did, I said. Every time I came to a family gathering, you compared me to Marcus. You asked when I'd get a real job. You offered me money. You pitted me. Marcus flinched. I wanted you to value me for who I am, I continued. Not for what I've accomplished. I wanted to know if you'd love me even if I was struggling. Even if I wasn't as successful as Marcus. We do love you, Mom said. We always have. But you didn't respect me, I said. Not until you found out I was rich. Not until you learned I was successful. That's what hurts. Silence fell again. Aunt Linda spoke up. For what it's worth, Sarah, I've always been proud of you. Not because of your job or your money, but because of who you are. Kind, thoughtful, brilliant. That's what matters. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. We want to make this right, Dad said. Tell us how. I looked around the table. At my parents, desperate for forgiveness. At Marcus, ashamed and chastened. At Aunt Linda, supportive as always. I don't know if you can, I said honestly. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you yet. Maybe someday. But not today. Mom's face crumpled. Sarah. But, I continued, I'm willing to try. To rebuild. To see if we can have a relationship based on who we actually are, not who you thought I was. We'll do anything, Dad said. Then start by asking me questions, I said. Real questions. About my work, my life, my dreams. Not questions designed to confirm your assumptions. Questions because you actually want to know. Okay, Mom said. Hey, we can do that. The rest of dinner was awkward, halting. But it was a start. Mom asked about Apex Ventures. Dad asked about my investment philosophy. Marcus asked what it was like to be on boards. I answered honestly. I told them about the startups I'd funded, the founders I believed in, the risks I'd taken. I told them about the failures too. The companies that had crashed, the bets that hadn't paid off, the hard lessons I'd learned. They listened. Really listened, maybe for the first time in years. At 9 o'clock I stood to leave. Will you come back? Mom asked. Next week. Maybe, I said. If you want me to. We do, Dad said. Very much. Marcus walked me to my car. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining. I'm sorry, he said again. For everything. For being an asshole. For making assumptions. For offering you loans when you probably have more money than I'll ever make. I smiled despite myself. You don't know that. Cloudreach's IPO will make you rich. Not Apex Ventures rich, he said. Not Sarah Mitchell rich. Money isn't the point, I said. I know. But it's hard not to feel stupid. I spent years talking down to you. Years thinking I was the successful one. Years pitying you. You weren't entirely wrong, I said. I was struggling. Just not financially. I was struggling to figure out if my family would love me without the success. Turns out that's a harder question to answer than any pitch deck I've ever reviewed. And, what's the answer? I looked at him. My little brother who'd grown into a man I barely recognized. Who'd been insufferable and condescending and kind all at once. I'm still figuring it out, I said. I drove home through the empty streets, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement. My phone buzzed with a text from James Chen. James, board approved the IPO timeline. Roadshow starts in February. Thank you for believing in us when no one else would. I smiled and typed back. Thank you for building something worth believing in. The Cloudreach IPO happened on March 12th. The stock opened at $42 and closed at $68. The company was valued at $3.9 billion. My Series A investment was now worth $247 million on paper. I didn't go to the opening bell ceremony. I watched from my office at Apex, surrounded by my partners, celebrating another successful exit. Marcus called that evening. My options are worth $4.2 million, he said, sounding dazed. I'm a millionaire. Congratulations, I said, meaning it. Sir, thank you. I know you didn't invest because of me. But still. Thank you. You earned it, I said. You helped build that company. Be proud of what you accomplished. I am, he said. And I'm proud of you too. For what it's worth. I should have said that years ago. Yeah, I said. You should have. Better late than never? I thought about that. About forgiveness and family and the complicated math of love. Yeah, I said finally. Better late than never. We hung up. Outside my window, Sand Hill Road stretched toward the horizon, lined with venture capital firms that had shaped the technology landscape. I was part of that world now. I'd earned my place at the table. But I'd also learned something important. Success without recognition is still success. Worth without validation is still worth. I didn't need my family's approval to know my value. But it was nice finally to have it anyway. My phone buzzed one more time. Mom in the family group chat. Mom, family dinner next Sunday. Sarah, please bring pictures of your work. We want to hear all about Apex Ventures. We want to know everything. I smiled and typed back a single word. Me okay. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. And sometimes a beginning is enough.